truth ratings to fact checks before. And what they do is, let's say person A said something on January 1st, 2014. And that thing was true then as far as they knew. But then on January 15th, 2014, evidence came out to show that what they had said was actually false. So PolitiFact will give them a half-true rating. And that's not right, to apply a later standard to something somebody said earlier. You have to go with the evidence they had that day at that moment and apply your truth rating there. So what I tell people is, forget about PolitiFact's truth rating. I wouldn't pay so much attention to that. Just read the story. They give you the truth and the references in the story, but they're kind of weird on how they apply their labels. So chronology is not that important to them. Sometimes ambiguity with definitions is not that important to them, but they do give their references, and you can check those references. So you can kind of, in my opinion, I don't know if you guys have found any different, but Tampa Bay Times, PolitiFact, and PunditFact, and FactCheck.org seem to be pretty on the ball to me as far as their content, not necessarily their labels, but their content. They're going to take a story and say, how true is this? They're going to sometimes misapply the label, which is the simple definition, but they're going to put the story in there. Here's what person A said. Here's what person B said. Here's what the statisticians from this place said. Here's our conclusion. That's simple. Next is going to be argument from age, wisdom of the ancients. Snobbery, I use this sometimes, I'm sorry, I admit it, I do. Snobbery that very old or very young arguments are superior. This is a variation of the genetic fallacy, but has the psychological appeal of seniority and tradition. Products labeled new and improved are appealing to a belief that innovation is of value for such products, if sometimes true. And then there's cans of old-fashioned baked beans. I mean, he's given polar opposites here, and I think it's a good description. Not invented here, ideas from elsewhere that are made unwelcome. This is the way we've always done it. That's the worst argument you can make. And I see this at business meetings a lot. You're at a business meeting. Well, we've always done it this way. So, what's good about this way versus the new proposed way? Is there any benefit over the proposed way of this old way? Certainly not because it's the old way. And I guess the implied question there is, well, it got to be this way, so it must have been a good idea. That's not always true. Sometimes things got to be a way through pure neglect. So always consider new ideas, new ways to do things. Doesn't mean you have to accept them. But saying this is the way we've always done it is not a good argument for anything. One of the examples they use there is the assertion that America has the best healthcare system in the world, an idea that this 2007 New York Times editorial refuted. I think we knew then that we didn't have the best healthcare system in the world, and I still don't think we necessarily do. I think you got to look at mortality rates, cure rates, treatment rates, and all that before you can make that assessment. And typically, these studies don't include all of those elements. They look at basically cost, benefits, and death rates. So, argument by dismissal. This one's used often, and it doesn't have any meat to it. It's just an idea is rejected without saying why. So dismissals usually have overtones. For example, if you don't like it, leave the country. Implies that your cause is hopeless, or that you are unpatriotic, or that your ideas are foreign, or maybe all three. If you don't like it, live in a communist country. Adds an emotive element to it. There we go back to the extremes again. It's one of the first ways you can recognize somebody that's not very intelligent. They will always stand on the polar ends of an argument. It's always got to be black or white with them. Can't I dislike some of the things about my country and want to change them without you telling me that I have to leave the country? And personally, I'm one of those people that's pretty satisfied with my country right now. But if I want to have some issues with some shit, I should be able to have some issues with some shit without being told to leave the country. That's just someone who's gone to the black and white thinking, because it keeps it simple for the simple mind. The complex mind, the higher intelligence mind, is going to go into the gray areas, and we draw things out of there. Don't always go into a discussion or argument sure of what you want to come out of it with. If you're sure of what you want to come out of it with, you're trying to sell something. You're not trying to learn, and you're not trying to debate. Let's see. Argument by emotive language, you know that. Just appealing to emotions. Poisoning the well is discrediting the sources used by your opponent, and it is a variation of ad hominem. I said that when I told you about ad hominem because I've already read through these. Argument by personal charm, we've seen that all the time. Appeal to pity, appeal to sympathy, the Galileo argument. And you hear this all the time on YouTube when you see stuff like, even the 9/11 conspiracy theories, but also stuff like about aliens and stuff. And I'm interested in aliens. I think there are some genuine weird sightings out there that need to be investigated, but I don't know if they're necessarily aliens. I just want to learn more about them. They will come up and say, well, everybody used to tell Copernicus he was wrong, and everybody used to tell Galileo he was wrong. And all of a sudden, the fact that some great scientist in the past has been laughed at and was proven right, they're also just as credible as that scientist. No, you're not. See, the thing about Galileo and Copernicus is they had evidence, strong mathematical and visual evidence for you to look at with which to draw their conclusions. Do you know that some scientists that were in the presence of Galileo would not even use the equipment that he had designed at all? They would not even acknowledge it. So whether it was active or passive, there was an argument by dismissal there. I'm not looking at what this motherfucker has to say. And in science, you can't do that. You got to consider everything. Appeal to force, threats, or even violence. On the net, the usual threat is of a lawsuit. The traditional religious threat is that one will burn in hell. However, history is full of instances where expressing an unpopular idea could get you beaten up on the spot or worse. And the quote they use is, "The clinching proof of my reasoning is that I will cut anyone who argues further into dog meat." And that's attributed to Sir Geoffrey de Turneville, 1350 AD. Yeah. Have you seen that before? Let's see. Now, we've gone about halfway down the page. I'm going to check in chat real quick, and then we'll figure out where we want to go from here, because I'll need, at a minimum, a little break. Who else is in there? Dinorphin? God, it must be late. Appeal to emotion. Pimpat lives at Court, Greenville, Wisconsin. No, Mekazawa, actually, I already told him where to come to fight. I don't stalk people. But if he shows up here, I will beat his ass all up and down the street. I'm not talking about that again. He's got clear instructions on how to get in touch with me. So I'm not talking about it again. So you go ahead and say all that shit you want to in chat room. I'm not afraid of you or any of the people with you. And if you all want to show up at the same time, I'll be happy to come whip your asses. There's a certain amount of disrespect I'll take, and then I'm just going to get animal. So come on down. But see, I'm not the stalky type. I've got other things to do. As you can hear, this radio show is trying to make a difference, to help people. I'm not chasing losers around the country. Yeah, not my thing. Never has been. I'm an honorably discharged American U.S. Air Force veteran with a disability from a bum knee. And I don't know. I guess I expect a certain amount of respect for that. But since you guys aren't capable of that, you're going to get what's coming to you. And if you bring your ass to my neck of the woods, you're going to get it with some authority. So come on down. I'm not mad. I just don't have any tolerance for assholes. I don't have any tolerance for people that pick with me. I just don't have it. Maybe I should. Maybe I should be just cooler and calmer, but no, I'm not. It's not in my nature. It's just not in my nature. So anyway, let's get back to learning and doing something productive here. Ipso facto, we talked about, that was something that Mr. Solutions had used, and I thought it was out of context. It wasn't entirely wrong, because he was talking about cause and effect, but he did not bring the effect directly, the effect directly after the cause. So I thought it was a little bit misplaced. These are things I point out, and I would like pointed out to me if I make the mistake. Appeal to anonymous authority. I see this one all the time. I know you guys do too. You know what it is. It's just what it sounds like. And then you have the regular appeal to authority. Let me give an example of this, though, because people are going to be confused between the two. The appeal to authority, is the example they give is Albert Einstein was extremely impressed with this theory. But a statement made by someone long dead could be out of date. Or perhaps Einstein was just being polite. Or perhaps he made a statement at some specific context. In some specific context, and so on. To justify an appeal, the arguer should at least present an exact quote. It's more convincing if the quote contains context, and if the arguer can say where the quote comes from. There's a variation to this appeal to authority called called the unnamed authorities, or this is going to be the anonymous authority. There was a New Yorker cartoon showing a doctor and patient. The doctor was saying, conventional medicine has no treatment for your conditions. Luckily for you, I'm a quack. So the joke was that the doctor boasted of his lack of authority. That takes a more advanced understanding of humor. In my opinion, that's along the lines of a Frasier, but you know what appeal to authority is. Here's the thing. I like appeal to authority if the authority you're appealing to is a valid one, is a reputable one, and is an authority upon whom you can put context in order to clarify the quote that you're using from them. Or the book. You might be quoting an 800-page book. Like, one of the most controversial books out there is called The Bell Curve. If you ever read that, you got to read it. If you can handle a little bit of statistics, the math part of it, that part does get boring, I'll admit. But it basically talks about, like, intelligence in America among classes and races. And they got very scientific with this. And they knew when they did it that there was going to be a huge outrage to some of the findings. And they still did it. Now, those are cowboy scientists to me. I'm not a fan of cowboys, but these guys were shooting from the hip. I mean, they loved science so much that they were willing to publish these highly controversial findings at risk to themselves and their families and their careers because it was the truth as they found it, using their methods, which are scientific methods. I don't know if you guys knew this, but like when I was in school, math isn't really arguable. Have you noticed that? We would use this program for, I wish I could remember the name of it, but for psychology and for psych statistics, which was a separate course altogether, something called, like, I don't remember, like LSS or something statistics, something. And all this program did was calculate variables into usable numbers, essentially. You plugged in your numbers, you put in your standard deviations, you put in everything you needed for your survey, your cross sections and everything, and how wide your population was, both physically and how divided up racially and sexually it was, and all that. And then their values would be spit out to say how fair, essentially, a testing method or survey was. And it's very mathematical. And you can adjust these numbers slightly. This happens a lot in polls, and get very different results. So you got to know how people are doing their polling to really know how accurate the results are. But personally, I kind of like the numbers. I like it when people can tell me there's an 83% chance that you're going to die falling down a flight of stairs. That's going to be your ultimate cause of death. And that way, I don't know, it feels comforting to me. Like, I can work with numbers. If you just say there's a pretty good chance you're going to die falling down stairs when you're in your 80s, I'm going to be like, what do you mean pretty good? Put a number with it. It helps me categorize the risk of something if it's accurate. And that's really what I was talking about, which is appeal to authority. Don't use appeal to anonymous authority. Okay, that can help you in an instant, but it can backfire on you when someone looks up your shit. Second, don't appeal to fake authority. You'll be caught. If anybody cares about what it was you were arguing, you'll be caught doing that. They're going to find out that either the person you made up or the reference you made up was either non-existent or incorrect, or you completely misconstrued what it was they were saying. In either case, you're going to get caught. Don't use anything fake. Use real shit. If you don't have real shit, say, I don't know. I think this, but I don't know. I'm going to check chat one more time, and then I'm going to read a few more of these, and we're going to call it a show. And I think I'll have to do a second half because my voice will be gone by the time we get down. We're not even going to get to non sequitur tonight. I'll probably have to fall off here around exception that proves the rule. Yeah, that's about how far I can go. And then my voice is going to be gone. I'll see what kind of response we get to this one, and if it is good, then we will definitely do a second part. Okay, I'm seeing some weird conversations in there, but nothing really on this topic, so I'm going to keep going. I want to thank you guys that have come to the show tonight, and those that are listening later, you'll still get something out of this, so stay tuned. We have a few more to talk about, and we're going to do the second half, probably tomorrow night or the night after. Depends on when I feel like it. I do need